This is one 4K UHD disc that is immediately markedly superior to the Blu-ray equivalent taken from the same master. This is John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness, and you're going to have a devil of a good time watching this. Recently I did a review of John Carpenter's Halloween, and that was a good excuse to take a look at John Carpenter's career. He is probably my favourite director. There are others, Ridley Scott, Clint Eastwood, maybe Steven Spielberg, a few others. But I think John Carpenter has done more of my favourite films than any other filmmaker. So in that review of Halloween, I took a look at some of the films that were released on Super 8 before the home video market was ever really thought of or ever really got going. One of the films that was released was by Duran Film Services. It was a 400-foot cut down of the TV movie Elvis, played by Kurt Russell. And as I said, to me Kurt Russell was more like Elvis than Elvis. So did a better job of playing him than the real man did. Another of the early releases was a 2x400-foot release of Dark Star by Ivor Film Services. Now they also did a full feature, but I have to admit I've never actually seen a full feature print. I have the 2x400 on a 600-foot reel, and looking at it again recently, it actually plays better today than it ever did in the 70s, 80s, 90s and beyond. It's got something of a cult following now, that film, and looking at it again with fresh eyes, it's easier to see why. So maybe worth taking another look at that.
The planet just exploded, sir.
It's hard to believe that John Carpenter's The Thing was not one of the biggest films of all time when you look at it today. It's just a tour de force of filmmaking, and the Rob Bottin effects are just mesmerising. Have they ever been surpassed? I don't think so. There's one or two dodgy shots in it perhaps, but overall an absolute masterpiece. And it seems I was one of the few that was lucky enough to enjoy that film at the theatre. Now, Prince of Darkness came after a couple of really not very good John Carpenter films, in my opinion. Big Trouble in Little China and Christine I just didn't get on with, and I thought maybe he'd gone off the boil. And it was interesting really looking back that I did not see Prince of Darkness on its first release. But fortunately a few years later in the John Carpenter retrospective at the British Film Institute National Film Theatre, they played all his films, and Prince of Darkness got a big screen outing in NFT1, and I was lucky enough to see it in that very dark theatre with that very big screen. And as I said before, I thought it was a very scary film. And looking at it again today on this 4K disc, I can see why. This transfer is good. The colour, the contrast, they are exceptional, and they do give you the impression that you're actually watching a true film print. Now, as many of you who watch my channel will know, I'm always comparing the 4K disc to the Blu-ray. I even did a video on the subject, is there a perceptible difference? Well, this is probably the first one that I've seen where there really is a definite perceptible difference. I can't really put my finger on why that is, but I was expecting the Blu-ray to be almost or just as good as the 4K. So when the 4K finished, I put the Blu-ray on, and immediately it was lackluster by comparison. Now, it was still very good, but the 4K, it's got better colour, it's got better contrast, HDR, and it could be the exceptional contrast fooling the human eye, but to me it looks sharper on the home screen. Now that's unusual because unless you've got a whopping great barn with a 25-foot screen in it or something, we haven't really got very big screens. I know I've got a 10-foot screen in the living room, which I must try this out on one of these days. But it is still very difficult to see the difference between 4K and HD at home. But on this one, a definite difference. And I think it's worth taking a look at Prince of Darkness, if nothing else, just to see that 4K is superior. Now, I should point out that one of the cameras taking the wider shots appears to have had a lens alignment fault or a lens flaw, because towards the middle left top of the image, quite often you can tell that characters are out of focus. They're only in wide shots, but that's just one thing to bear in mind, which it's only occasional, but it does spoil the enjoyment a little of what is a great looking film. From the very first time I saw this film at the NFT, I found it creepy right from the start. I think John Carpenter's score in this, which I think is probably his best, it pounds along all the way through and it really does help build that tension. The opening titles are intercut with brief scenes introducing all the characters and laying the foundation of the plot, and all the while that pounding score is going, and it just leads you into, well, what is a pretty basic sort of film. It's low budget, but the special effects are really effective. There's nothing over the top like previous films such as The Thing, for example, but they made the girl who's turning into Satan. They made her look just like a burn victim, and she hurts to look at times, and the simple effects with the fluid that's containing Satan's essence, whatever it is, shooting down from the ceiling into characters' mouths, well, that's obviously a dummy with the camera turned upside down, but it is surprisingly effective. And even the fluid in that giant flask, it looks really simple how they did that, but you can tell on the extras on this it wasn't simple, and they had a devil of a job getting it to work, but nevertheless it is effective, and you wouldn't think that it could be scary having the devil in a bottle, which is essentially what it is, but it really does work, and with that pounding score, as I say, keeps you on the edge of your seat right to the end, and that end does come all too soon. So if there's one criticism I can say of this film, it pops along too quickly, and maybe that's just a sign of good filmmaking. The performances are convincing, the characters are good, and they're all likeable. So watch this in the dark, turn the volume up, and jump out of your skin a few times. You're going to love it. The sound on this is, well, there's a 5.1 track, but you've got to select that now. It's a menu option because it defaults to the original Ultra Stereo 2.0, which is, of course, the same as the Dolby ProLogic matrixed 4-track sound. So I didn't play the Dolby Stereo this time. I've run that enough times on the Laserdisc, but we ran the 5.1, and it's very powerful. So good to watch this with a 5.1. I got this in a 2 for £30 deal, I'm sure most of us in England know, or Britain know, with HMV, with another Carpenter classic, They Live, which is another film I really like. I don't think it's, well, it's a science fiction film, isn't it, whereas this is a shocker, and I like them both, but this one's has got some hilarious sequences, and the topper is at the end. But this is another very good transfer, and because most of this is outdoors, this has got better image quality predominantly than Prince of Darkness, but you have to compare like for like, and a few of the early outdoor shots during the opening titles on this, they really stood out, and perhaps just the whole thing of this stands out, but neither of them I think are among the best of the 4K releases, but they're very good, and this does warrant another look. So, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and perhaps consider subscribing so I'll be encouraged to create similar content in the future. Until the next time, bye bye for now.